I don't know about you guys, but I need a little bit of therapy. I'm in dire need of zoning out right now. And if there's one thing I know, it's that when I need some therapy and I don't want to pay for it, I make homemade pasta. And the pasta I find especially therapeutic to make are orecchietti. This has been my pride and joy for the last few weeks. This is the book by American pasta master Evan Funke. He's a guy who describes himself as maniacal about pasta. He doesn't believe in a pasta machine. His philosophy on pasta is very old school, and it's something that I really relate to. And I've been studying from his ways. He studied from this lady, Maestra Alessandra Spizni. She's an 8-time world champion pasta roller. So she knows what she's doing, and she's from Bologna, and a lot of the recipes that he cooks are from the region of Emilia-Romagna. Orecchietti is more of a pasta shape from the south in Puglia, specifically the streets of Bari, where they're like famous grandmas who will make this on the side of the street, dry out orecchietti, and sell them to the public. Now, I don't have mentors. I had never really worked in a restaurant besides my food cart. I don't learn from people in a physical way. I have to find mentors and stuff on the internet and through books, and then study their ways. And that's sort of what I've done over the course of my life to get good at cooking, is I find the right people to study from and then practice. And today I need to practice. I just need to sit here and play with dough and get better at making orecchietti, and I think that that's gonna make me feel better. Plus, back in the day, not everyone could afford eggs. So the idea of egg pasta was very much this kind of luxury that only maybe the wealthier people were able to do. Making pasta with just flour and water was a sign of frugality and maybe scarcity, and sort of is something that is reminiscent of right now. And it's why I think I gravitate towards Italian cooking, because a lot of the famous recipes were rooted in scarcity and just trying to make something out of nothing. And that's the way I've been trying to think about this whole ordeal that we're going through. And so today I hope I can offer you a way to make dough. You can make a few different shapes, but the most popular ones I think you're gonna make with this are cavatelli or orecchietti. But today we're just gonna make orecchietti, and I'm gonna use a recipe for the dough from Evan Funke. So I'm gonna use a scale in grams and follow his recipe. Now he uses 00 flour to make his flour and water dough, which I have here. And this is what I mainly use for egg doughs. It's just ground a little finer. The way Evan describes 00 flour is as the Ferrari of flour. So that's what he uses, but today I'm gonna use organic durum wheat semolina flour. And this is what is more traditional in the streets of Bari and Puglia. So it goes to show you that you can use whatever you have. This recipe calls for 00 flour. I'm gonna use semolina, and we have amounts, but the difference is in humidity. If you're gonna make this in Florida, then you might need less water. I actually made orecchietti for a friend's wedding that I went to down in Florida, and I dried orecchietti out before I went. And it was so humid when I got there that the orecchietti kind of hydrated a little bit. So that was a really interesting example of how humidity can affect this. So take this as a guide, but we're gonna have to feel things out when we're making this. So we're gonna start off with 1 pound of flour and 225 grams or 8 ounces of tepid water. Tepid meaning kind of hot or warmish. I've got my scale. I'm gonna turn my scale on, put your bowl on, and then tare. So you've zeroed out the scale, now you can pour in your flour. 454 grams. There's our flour. Same thing with the water. I'm just gonna warm up a little bit of tap water and then measure out 225 grams. I'm not gonna add oil or salt. I'm just going to start to make this using the well method. And so what we're gonna do is pour dough in the middle of the board. Now it's good to have one of these because you can just sort of control things a little bit easier. This is a bench scraper. Having that is key. Now with my hand, I'm going to make a well, and I want it to be pretty big. You want there to be legitimate walls, and you want to be able to see the bottom of the board in the middle. And then from there, we're gonna add our water. And then we're gonna use a fork, and we're just gonna start to incorporate it like you were sort of beating eggs until we get it to like a pancake batter consistency. As you're mixing, pull in some of that flour. Now what you want to do is take your bench scraper and almost like you're folding biscuits, or the way they do it in the South, we're going to fold the flour and cut into the mix. Fold and cut. Now you want to work it until it comes together. Now this dough is real sticky now, and what we're doing is we're trying to work that flour into the dough. Just keep kneading until the dough absorbs as much flour as it can and is just slightly tacky. Scrape off any dry bits off the board. Get all that out of there and just start working this dough. Now there's a few ways to knead. This is the grandma method, where it's just two hands, you're rolling it into like a log, and then you fold it onto itself, and then you keep rolling. This is more of like a baker's way of kneading. But when it comes down to it, you just really need to find a method of kneading that you're comfortable with. So now it's sort of very soft, very supple. It's got some bounce to it. Now the key to pasta is a balance between elasticity and extensibility. So you want it to be elastic enough to kind of have a bite and to have some structure, but you want enough extensibility so that you could be able to roll it and shape it in a way that you want. And that's why we're working in developing gluten, and there's two ways to do that. It's by kneading and working, and it's also by resting. So the way Evan rolls his pasta is that he works it a little bit, and then he rests it for a little bit. And then he works it for a little bit, and then he rests it for a little longer period, and then he's ready to make pasta. And it's a very interesting way of wrapping the dough. He takes a square piece of plastic wrap and he puts the dough bottom up. And then he takes a little piece of the plastic wrap, folds it down, and then begins pleating. So he's pleating the plastic so that there's a relatively even seal all along the plastic. Now we're just gonna let this rest for 15 minutes at room temperature, and then it's gonna sort of rest and relax. Understand, the idea is we're hydrating flour. So the longer this sits, the more hydrated it becomes, the softer it becomes, the easier it is to roll out. So that's the kind of balance we're working on. We're gonna get really deep into this kind of stuff, and I'm gonna repeat a lot of this information just so it becomes more understandable. The only reason I'm able to understand it better than I used to be is because I kind of watched people do these things over and over and over again and say the same things. After enough kind of learning, you just get it. So that's why I repeat a lot. Repetition is the key to learning. This is called a bench rest. Okay, now it's been 15 minutes, so I'm gonna unwrap it. I'm gonna continue to knead it because it should be much softer and much more hydrated, and we can continue to work a little bit of that gluten in there. So let's get this guy open and start to knead. Now, as you can see, it's like shinier already. So you can see that gluten is starting to develop. Now, when you're working it, if it's a little too dry, you can wet your hands and work it into the dough, or you can use a spray bottle like this and just mist it, and you can sort of work more moisture into it, but this looks perfect, and we can just start to knead it. Now, while we're kneading it, we're trying to maintain this kind of ball. So with the heel of our hand, we're gonna pull back and then push forward and then turn, and then keep doing that. Turn and knead, turn and knead. And you can do it forcefully. As you can see, you're working air into the dough. Every time you fold it back in, you're working air pockets into the dough. See, folding in that air. So again, if you have trouble closing any of these pieces, you can spritz some water and it sort of helps seal them. Sometimes if you don't work it hard enough or well enough, when you go to roll it, there'll be like gaps in the center. So it's something you have to be careful of. That's sort of a sign of maybe not enough hydration in the dough. So you always want to make sure that there's no excess flour on the board. And now we're just going to wrap this the same way. Now we should have worked it well enough at this point. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rest this on the table for 3 to 4 hours at a minimum. Or what I could do is I could put it in the refrigerator for up to 24 hours. And that's all the help that we're gonna take from Evan today. Next, we're gonna sort of rely on grandmas in Puglia and Bari on the technique that I learned on how to make orecchietti. So it's been a few hours, and I kind of just want to get started. This is the part of the process that I look forward to. We're gonna unwrap it, and then I have a knife, and we're gonna cut pieces off in like a sawing motion very gently, and then we're gonna roll that out into like a little snake. And I don't roll them out at once. I kind of will cut a piece off and then make my orecchietti, then let them dry. Because I don't want the dough to dry out, then it becomes hard to roll out, it becomes hard to form into the orecchietti. And I have these wire racks that I'll just set off to the side. And when I'm done making a line of orecchietti, then I'll transfer them over here and let them dry. They need time to at least cure a little bit, semi-dry, even if you're gonna make them right away, so that they'll hold their shape once they do cook. So the drying or the curing process is actually important when making pasta. And this is the tool we're gonna use to make the ears. And basically, you're gonna have to figure out your own process and your own style of doing it. The women in Bari can cut, roll, and flip and shape in one smooth move, and they can do it fast as hell. And that's sort of what I'm hoping to aspire to, but I can't do it as well. I'm practicing, and that's what this is all about. It's a lifelong thing, right? So let's just jump right into it. I'm gonna keep my plastic, and that's gonna be wrapped over it to keep it nice and moist. If you can see those little air pockets that are worked into the dough, and then the dough is a nice dense mass, that's how you know you did a good job. So I'm gonna keep that off to the side, keep it wrapped, and then I have this guy that I'm gonna roll. This is legitimately Play-Doh, and so this is perfect to get your kids involved and to just have fun with it. And this is what I look forward to. Usually I'll throw my headphones in and just zone out doing this. So just roll it out into a thin rope. Now to measure, to make sure you have them the same size and length, you can just twist them together and then be able to see if they're the same thickness. So So that looks about good to me. And so now what I'm gonna do is take my rope, and you want even sizes. So I like to take a thumbnail, and about the size of a thumbnail, I'll cut, and then I will place pressure on it and roll, and then fold over my thumb. Now the first one I mess up, always. And that goes into my matayati, which is poorly rolled pasta. So if you have any ones that are bad, you just throw them off to the side, and then I make little coins. That's much better. And then you're just gonna go through and try and hone your shapes. And you wanna do it fast enough that these guys don't dry out too much. Don't get too discouraged with the first few. It really does take a little calibrating to figure out the right pressure to roll with. Depending on how I'm feeling, I kind of move my fingers around the knife and use sort of different techniques and try and stick with whatever feels best or most comfortable in that moment. The key is rolling it as flat and as even as you possibly can, making sure each one is the same. So now's where I'll just put my headphones in and just zone out. This is really all about developing a feel for the dough and a feel for the knife and trying to make it all come together into one even thickness and size across all the orecchietti. So there I do, I have to let these kind of set for a little bit so that they can be handled, and we have orecchietti. Flour and water, it's amazing. And to tell you the truth, I just spent, a few hours working on that and zoned out. Feels so much better. I just focused in on this and it's what I needed. Now, I was terrible when I started this. If you've been following me on Instagram, I showed you the first time I made them and they looked awful. And the progress you make each time you make them, like from the first one you roll to the last one you roll, is amazing. So don't feel discouraged if you get there and you start to press one out and you're like, I don't know how to do this. Just feel it out, work it out. Just kind of understand how pressure is being used with that knife, and you have to get used to the amount of pressure necessary to roll it nice and flat. I'm still getting good at it myself, so don't worry. So you can see this one's sort of dried out, so it can hold its shape. It's not fully dry, it's kind of cured, but now you could go ahead and you could cook these off. I got my matayati, which is the poorly cut pasta. So I just want to show you some really bad attempts, right? This is bad. This is an uneven curl. There's this tear right here. That's not a great piece of pasta. Here's another one. Super thick right here. That's gonna be crunchy. So maybe I'll squash it out. See, but do you get the difficulty in making this? Is that if this part is really thick and the inside is really thin, then you're gonna have overcooked pasta here and then undercooked pasta on the edges. That's a key aspect of difficulty about making orecchietti. Fresh pasta does not ever become al dente because it was never dried to begin with. It's only when you dry a pasta do you get an al dente. So there you have it, orecchietti. We'll finish off the dish next episode. I just want to shout out to all my patrons right now. I just have to like really tell you from the bottom of my heart, especially now, the fact that you guys are supporting me really means the world to me. It creates a little bit of stability and comfort for me. So I do really appreciate all you patrons, everyone who watches my videos and supports this channel. Even a view of these videos is very supportive for me right now. So just want to thank you all. Hope you're all safe. Pasta making is therapy, so I hope you guys try this. I hope you make it with your kids, and I hope that you guys can nail it. That's all I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself, go feed yourself, stay home, stay safe, and stay cooking.